Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Is it permissible to seek out dispensations from different schools of thought? Now, the phrasing of this question is a bit tricky, right? Because generally, if the question is it permissible to follow a dispensation from a different school of thought, right? Can I follow another madhhab or school of thought when needed? The very phrasing of the question makes the question entirely different. Simply following a dispensation from another school is permissible, and I don't know of any scholars who would differ with that concept, right? Of course, they would have conditions and restrictions as to why or how or when or in what manner one adopts a dispensation. But at the same time, scholars also agree that to seek out dispensations deliberately, what we would refer to in Arabic as tatabbu'ur rukhas, right? To deliberately seek them out, that would be unlawful. Okay, so what exactly is the difference then? Following a dispensation of another school, a very common example in this regard is a Shafi'i who finds it inconvenient, perhaps, too difficult and tedious, perhaps, to adopt the Shafi'i position that touching his wife would break his wudu. So he decides to adopt the Hanafi view that touching the wife doesn't break the wudu. Or perhaps the Maliki or Hanbali view. The Maliki is a bit more complex, and the Hanbali view states that if it's a touch with desire, then it would break the wudu. If it's a touch without desire, then it would not break the wudu. So the person follows this dispensation either because their circumstances, taking wudu too frequently damages their skin, it's just an inconvenience. They need to be with wudu, and then because they work together with their spouse, they need to reperform their wudu several times. Whatever the case may be, it's permissible. It's a dispensation. We are not obliged to stick within the bounds of one particular madhab. We are not duty bound by a madhab. We are duty bound by the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The madhab is a facilitation, a convenient way to follow the law of Allah Azza wa Jal. Or in other words, it is one interpretation of what the law of Allah Azza wa Jal is. So if you follow a slightly different interpretation in one matter here, one matter there, where needed, there's no problem with that. The only other consideration that we need to be wary of is the issue of talfiq. And that is, simply put, to combine several different opinions from several different scholars or madhahib and end up with a result that would not be considered valid by any of the constituent parts. Right? So you take a view from the Hanafi school, a view from the Maliki school, a view from the Shafi'i school, and the common example here is the example of nikah. So one school requires no witnesses, one school requires no wali, one school, so you combine opinions like that, and then you end up with a type of nikah that would not be valid according to the Maliki school, the Hanafi school, the Shafi'i school, any of the schools of thought. That there is talfiq, right? That type of contradictory combinations of opinions. But as long as you are not deliberately following up dispensations or committing talfiq, following another view is generally going to be permissible, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. How does one deliberately follow up dispensations? Firstly, let me state that this requires a sort of a mischievous intention. This means that the student, the person, is going to follow up looking on the internet or searching in books to find all the opinions wherein there's a difference of opinion, and they look for the easiest way out. Or throughout fiqh, they are always finding out what's the easiest view, what's the easiest view, what's the easiest view. That there, tatabbu'ur rukhas, to deliberately seek that out, that is impermissible. The second issue, over and above the mischievous attitude in this regard, is the complexity involved in actually doing this, right? Alhamdulillah, as a student, I've studied for a number of years. I've studied the Shafi'i school in particular, at times reading, within other madhahib. But I can safely say that even to shop for dispensations within one school requires a lot of study, a lot of time, a lot of effort. And it requires a lot of knowledge, because you actually have to go through all these opinions and understand them in order to find out which one is the most convenient, which one is the dispensation, and then to go and deliberately follow that. So it's not as easy as it may seem, and it also shouldn't be conflated with the idea of, oh, this particular view in my madhab is difficult, so I want to follow an easier view. That's one instance. Tatabbu'ur rukhas is not one or two instances. It is habitually and deliberately seeking out dispensations. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lamu bis-sawab. There are detailed answers written on this topic on seekersguidance.org. The answer that I've written in this regard, based on works by my teachers and others, is, can I follow another school or madhab when I need to, that you can find on our Seekers Guidance Answer Service, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله